Thank you, Richard, and good afternoon to all of you. Uh, we saw the four presentations from our esteemed speakers, wherein they shared their ideas about how the grid is changing. Grid is changing in various parts of the world, US, Europe, and so also the grid is changing in India. And when I'm talking about the grid, I'm talking about the distribution grid. Uh, the transformation that is happening is basically that distributed generation is now becoming an embedded thing in the network. Uh, Today, we are finding that large number of microgrids, large number of rooftop solars, large number of distributed generation is taking place. And this is, I think, the biggest transformation that is happening and in last 100 years. The transformation from large generating stations to distributed generations. And that means there is an opportunity for people to generate themselves and utilize the energy. So the load centers becomes the consumers of energy rather than transmitting large quantity of power from various locations. And this transformation has its own challenges. When we look at the Indian context, the first challenge is that our distribution networks are right now not really smart. It's not, in fact, automated. And there is a huge task before all the utilities that how do they bring in the basic smartness, the hygiene factor in terms of automation, in terms of SCADA control, in terms of GIS. And that's the first thing that our utilities have to do. The second is to bring the intelligence into it, and for that, how do they get information on real-time basis, integrate the network with the information technology, and use communication technology for getting real-time information and data. And that will help us in going, whether we do predictive maintenance or we do the monitoring of it, or we do any work which will help us to provide better quality service to the consumer. So that's the intelligence that has to come in. And huge amount of work needs to be done in terms of integrating the existing network with some of the new technologies that we are talking of. The next area is that when you have distributed generation to the network, then you have its own challenges. What happens to the power quality, what happens to the volt-var compensation, what happens to the harmonics, what happens to the various system stability issues which are connected to the grid. And these are challenges which has to be handled upfront. We cannot wait for this, that the network becomes weak or network has its own weaknesses in terms. Huge issues are coming up, and I think the challenge before the policymakers, challenge before the technologists is to come up with very smart solutions which are not only technologically correct but also are at the right price points. Because electricity, if we have to talk in terms of providing it in rural areas, has to be at a point which the affordability of the consumers has to be there. And I think that's where there has to be a convergence between the technology and the pricing and the economics of the business. And the people who are working in these areas, the technologists and the engineers, have to definitely consider that these are consumers who need power, but need power at a cost which is affordable to them. So I personally feel that we are at a very interesting time in the world. There are huge areas of work that can be done, whether it is in the urban grid or it is in the rural grid. There are also opportunities for technologists to do the convergence of technology. I think the barriers or the walls between technologies, between the electrical technology, information technology, and communication technology are getting blurred. They are all getting converged on one single platform, and that platform needs to provide quick and correct solutions to the consumers. So these are some of my thoughts on the grid. The grid has to be there. It is not that we are going to have wireless power and there is no necessity of a grid. The existing grid will continue to be there. It has to be upgraded, it has to become intelligent, it has to be modified, but it has to also get integrated with the distributed generation. It has to also get integrated with electric vehicles. It has to get integrated with storage. And that's where I think the work has to be done. A lot of work has been done outside India, especially in some of the countries in Europe and in US, but more focused and customized solutions for the Indian environment will be required, and I'm sure the experts who are here, part of this deliberation and part of the other deliberations, will look into some of these challenging areas and come up with solutions which can get implemented in the Indian context. So these are some of my views, and I would like to also ask some questions. I think, Richard, you have some questions, and once you do that, we will have some questions for the panelists. Thank you. Thank you very much.